Good morning. Welcome to the fourth day of SEC Football Media Days. We begin with Ole Miss coach Lane Kiffin. In 3 seasons at Ole Miss, Lane has led the Rebels to 3 straight bowl appearances, ranked among the nation's leaders in offense, including number 3 nationally in rushing offense, number 8 in total offense. As a collegiate athlete, he played at Fresno State under Pat Hill, was a quarterback there for 3 seasons. He also began his coaching career as a student assistant in 1997 at Fresno State. He's the son of renowned defensive mind Monte Kiffin. Lane attended Bloomington Jefferson High in Bloomington, Minnesota, where he played football, baseball, and basketball. He has 2 daughters, Landry and Presley, and a son, Knox. A full story, a full telling of the Mike Leach no tie story. As I shared Monday, we had the conversation backstage. Mike had a tie on. Later in media days, Lane arrived with no tie, emphasizing that I needed to run towards the Mike Leach and Lane Kiffin no tie attitude, which I've done this week. It's my honor to introduce to you, to begin our day 4, Ole Miss head football coach Lane Kiffin.
Thank you, Commissioner. All right, so we're going into our 4th year here at Ole Miss, which has been a very exciting offseason for us. You know, really grateful to Keith Carter, athletic director, our chancellor, Boyce, for keeping us here and believing in what we're building here, and our Ole Miss fans in the city of Oxford has been awesome. So excited for this 4th year coming up. You know, to recap, we were on a really good run. I'm not going to say a great run because we have extremely high standards, but you know, coming off the 10-3 season, and really last year we were 8-1, and with the ball in our hands to go down, I want to say the 14-yard line, 1st and 10, with a chance to beat Alabama, to have a great home win and go to 9-1. And so that was a really good run for a season and 9 games there. And then I didn't do a very good job at the end of the year of keeping our team together. I think, not as an excuse, but I set it up here a year ago. You know, the challenge is when you have such a roster overhaul and so portal heavy. And I've said I've always been concerned about culture issues when you do that because you don't have kids that have been there very long. So, and I said one of those challenges, even if you look at the NBA when they put together these good free agent teams, is if seasons don't go great, it's very hard to keep everybody playing at a high level because the expectations were so high. So I think down the stretch there, after the Alabama game, I didn't do a good enough job of finding a way to keep our guys playing at a high level because we did not play to our standards at the end of the season. So excited about this season coming up. There's been a ton of change, you know, 40 new scholarship players. It's kind of the world that we live in. I think everybody's experiencing that more than ever on their roster. And I think every place has their own plan, and every place does things differently, I would think. I have to speak for myself, based off of what you need to do at that place to win. There's not this blueprint that's everywhere, that would be the same everywhere, in my opinion, because you got to figure out high school kids, junior college kids, and then portal kids, and where your numbers go there. And you know, with the relief from the 25 initial scholarship counters every year, that gets more creative of how you can put your roster together. For those who are not familiar, before there used to be a cap there, so you could not have these massive roster changes that you've seen at some places around the country. Also, Pete Golding coming in on defense. We're really excited about that change and what he brings to bring him over from Alabama. Have known Pete and people that worked with him a long time. He's ahead of the game, very intelligent, really great recruiter as well. So there's some transition there with a lot of new coaches and a ton of new players, and some that missed spring, like Cedric Johnson, who's here today, missed the spring. So this fall will be really important for us in all areas, but especially on defense, of putting all that together to play good defense. Some topics here that are out there, and so I'm going to address the portal NIL, what I kind of call disaster that we're in. And so I know that question is going to come, and the reason why I break that down usually is because I do afterwards get a lot of feedback from you guys in the media or fans that they're appreciative of a coach that really addresses where it's at and what are the challenges with it. So first off, I've always said I think it's phenomenal that players get a chance to get paid, which is great. I do think, which I've stood up here and said before when it first happened, that there's going to be some major issues, and we're creating free agency with the portal. And with NIL, you've got a lot of pay for play going on, and that is what it is. So those two things combining, there just is not a system in place. And I don't think that there's any other sports at any level that are like this, that really you every year can opt into free agency, really twice a year. And I was just thinking on a plane ride over here, what if you had that in other sports? Tom Brady, A'ja Wilson, Lionel Messi, LeBron James. What if every year those guys can opt into free agency twice a year, really, and they got no long-term contracts? Basically, everybody's not even on a 1-month contract because they can leave in 2 windows. So it's just created a lot of issues, and these roster changes, and I'm not complaining about it because we take advantage, obviously, of free agency. But at the same time, I don't think that's really good for college football. These massive overhauls of rosters every year really is not in the best interest of college football. And then when you add the NIL at the same time, we've created, I've said it before, we got different caps and no luxury taxes. So now we got professional sports, because that really is what we are, what's been created now. And there's no caps on what guys can make or what teams' payrolls are. So when this first came out, it said, all right, basically whatever programs have the most aggressive boosters with the most money are going to get the players. And now we're adding some states that now you don't have to follow NCAA, and now the university can take their money and give it to the collective to give to the players. So now we really have pay for play, that the biggest schools with the most donors, most aggressive, and the school wants to spend the most money paying the players for play to come to their school is where we're at. So there's kind of your State of the Union on the situation of what all coaches are dealing with around the country, and really a poor system that isn't getting better now is going to get worse with this, because again, now we just look at recruiting rankings, and you're going to see that they usually are going to follow this, donor base and what schools are going to decide to give the most money to the players. So it is what it is. We'll deal with it like we do with everything else, but somehow it's got to get fixed because there's no system around it. So, we did a really neat thing this off season with mental health training for our staff. Myself, our coaching staff, everyone in our building went through a class. And I know at first people may think, okay, well, that's a good recruiting tool that you can say, hey, which I didn't even know at the time, we're the first staff to do this, that's trained in mental health. And be able to say that to parents in recruiting. That was not the motive at all. It really when I talk about, creating a new box, not just thinking outside the box, and we do that in analytics, we do that in all areas, I feel like in our program. We don't ever do anything because it's in that old book of how to coach and how to do things. In this mental health area, it really was not in that old school coaching book at all. It was just, hey, shut up and go practice and play, especially in the sport of football. So just over the years of going through so many mental health issues with our players and coaches, and not having tools and not having a really good system in place, besides just sending them, across campus, to a mental health specialist. So I was excited to do that, and just excited for the education with that and the ability to see things and help our players. Is really neat, because they just go through so much. Players always have, but now because of the social media and every play, everywhere, everybody's seen every play, our players go through a lot. I mean, you gotta remember they're kids, and they read all those things when fans or media say this play and they lost the game, and it's really challenging when you talk to the kids about how much that wears on them, as well as all the other issues they have to deal with. So that was pretty neat. And with that, I'll open up for questions.
Thank you, Coach. We'll go ahead and take questions. Go ahead, start right.
Jake Thompson, the Ole Miss Spirit. Lane, the penalties and the end of the Tennessee kind of investigation, with all that came out this past week. Obviously, your history with that program and other programs that kind of going through those penalties, just your thoughts on that overall.
Well, that didn't take long. I got a lot of thoughts on that case, and the case at USC and the case at Tennessee, and the penalties and all of that. And I'm not really going to get into that. We're here to talk about the Ole Miss team. Happy for Coach Heupel. I read where he was ecstatic about the penalties and the $8 million fine. So that kind of probably tells you about how severe the penalties are in their eyes. So I'm happy for them that they don't have to go through what we went through. So good for them.
Coach, we'll go into this middle section just to your right, second row.
Lane, hey, Joe Goodman, AL.com. I appreciated your candor on NAL. You're the czar of college football. How do you fix it? And that's the natural follow-up to your State of the Union.
Yeah, I don't like, it's like I tell our staff, I don't like you to tell me the problems but not the solution. So I feel like that in this one, that I don't have the exact solution, because it is so complicated, and the commissioner, who's much more educated than I on these things, because I used to say they should be employees so they can have real contracts, so when you come, you can sign somebody to a 2, 3, 4-year contract, and but there's way more issues. That solves one problem, I think he said, but then it opens up 5, 10 more when they're actually employees of a university. So I don't have the exact answers. I've always said, when asked, shorten the windows, so at least we know what your roster is, and not so many chances for players, because really, like I said, I like the players get paid, but there's no other system like it. Like the player, I've told our players, I've told our parents of our significant players, like, it is a great time to be a kid or a parent, okay, with where college football is. I'm like, they'll probably eventually fix this, so you will be this one window of a couple years where you literally can leverage your program every window, or you can go into free agency and find the most money out there. And now we're seeing you really get paid 3 times if you want to. You can get paid coming out of high school. You can one-time transfer, go in, get the most money, get paid again. Then you can grad transfer and get paid again. So eventually you're not going to be able to do that, I would think, and have that leverage basically every semester to do that. So I've told them it's an awesome time for them.
Coach will stay in the same section over on the right-hand side, right aisle, second row.
Hey Lane, Andy Witchery with On3. The Grove Collective is one of the 7 that's formed a collective association, and they plan on introducing a revenue sharing bill, or a model rather. So similar to the last question, what are your thoughts on potential revenue sharing in the future?
Okay, that mic went a little bit in and out there. Can you repeat that?
Yeah, the collective at Ole Miss is one of 7 that has formed a collective association, and they plan to introduce a revenue sharing model in the near future. What are your thoughts on a potential revenue sharing model for college football players?
Yeah, I mean, I think there, again, almost like everything on this subject, there's good and bad to everything that comes in. I think that revenue sharing, on the surface would be great because the players are getting paid and it's coming from the money they're helping make the university. But again, I kind of try to think things through, and the other things that happen when you do something, just like when everybody was like, oh, we got this NIL, it's great. And then, in this portal, it's great. Oh, whoa. And I'm not saying I was the only one saying it. I'm like, whoa, this is a disaster coming because you just legalized cheating. And you just told donors they can pay the players. That's what you did. And then, it's supposed to be set up, well, it's really for your name, image, likeness, for your marketing. Again, that's not what happened. That's not what's happening. They're getting paid to go to school, so it's pay for play. So the revenue sharing sounds really good, but then they're like, okay, well, we're going to revenue share, and then that's all they get. And I said, okay, well, wait. But then they're still going to have NIL, which really isn't NIL for probably 99% of the kids. They're not really getting the money for their marketing rights. So then revenue sharing would be good, but then you're still going to have this. So they say, well, revenue sharing would make it an equal playing field, which is what Instill always wants to do, make things equal playing field. Well, obviously, is what we described, with no salary cap and everybody operating off of different budgets. That's not anywhere close. So I don't know that fixes it. It sounds good, but then you're still going to have, here's your revenue sharing pot that everybody's the same, but then here you're still going to have all this other money that donors can go give players, or the way it is now, in some states, the school just funnels the money to the players.
Coach, will go over here to our left on the near aisle.
Good morning, Coach. Johnny Ballpark Franks with Franks Media here in Nashville and Huntsville. For decades, head coaches have been reminding players don't do anything to embarrass themselves, their family, teammates, and the university. Now in this new college football world that we see with NIL, the transfer portal, how much more difficult is it for a head coach to get that message across, not just to the student athletes, but also to staff members as well?
Well, I think that's always challenging. I think the challenge now is everything they do is public, so anything they do that maybe years ago, because the cell phone videos and everything, didn't get out there, that basically you've got to figure that someone's watching in everything you do all the time. So it is more challenging for these guys. That is a great thing. One of the few things that are great about cell phones is that, actually, because now the players are held more accountable in everything that they do. So in that way, it's gotten easier.
Coach, will go straight in front of you, 4th row.
Hey, Coach, I'm Mark Richardson from OrangeBloods.com. Coach, you and Steve Sarkisian are obviously really good friends. I want to see if you can tell me maybe how that friendship formed, if you have any good Lane Kiffin stories about that friendship, and, of course, your thoughts on Texas joining the SEC.
Well, it's Texas, Oklahoma. I'll go backwards there. Texas, Oklahoma coming in is amazing. I mean, I already look at our schedule, or like when they put out the one for 2024, and I actually joked to Steve Sarkisian yesterday about the scheduling, and I was like, well, I don't know why any coach would want to go to the NFL. Like, we're in it now. So, I mean, our schedule's like playing the NFL in the SEC now, especially adding those two. So, hats off to the commissioner for getting that done and making the super conference of all time. And really, the way it's set up, it's really like it's kind of everybody else, and then that. When you put together the competitiveness of the schedule compared to any other conference. I've had a great relationship with Sark. I've kind of said before, we kind of go both grew up fast by being the USC experience and being part of Coach Carroll's staff and all the great players there. And, I think 34 straight wins, and if we can tackle Vince Young, 3 straight national championships. So that was really cool to go through that with him. And then we've just always stayed close. I think he's doing awesome there. And, the way he's flipped the roster and recruiting at such a high level and signing Arch, I think the future is extremely bright for Texas football.
Coach, we'll go to this middle section to our right on the front row, on the right out.
Coach Dan Harrelson, Vollswire. Brian Kelly mentioned this week about artificial intelligence having intriguing opportunities in recruiting in the future. What is your opinion on that? And really just not recruiting, like you said, the transfer portal to keep forming a roster each offseason to find the best players that matches what you want to look for on the recruiting trail and in the portal.
Well, I'm the first to say up here, like when I know a lot about an area, I'm going to answer if I don't, I don't. So the artificial intelligence and using that in recruiting, I don't know about all that. So I can give you coach speak and pretend that I do. But the other part, what was the other part about?
Just to form a roster based off the model of a player that you're actually looking for.
Yeah, so the challenge on the roster is because of the different windows that you don't know what you have, you don't know what you're losing. Think about it this way. Imagine in professional sports, really I'm going to give you another window because grad transfers can still leave. I think leave in training camp. So imagine like in professional sports, which again we are, so as far as it is with players, that you're coaching a player in camp and then they go, you know what, I don't like the way you're coaching me. I've graduated, so I'm going to go. I'm going to go play for another team. And teams know that. People pre-portal and, they know who's going in, they know who's graduated, so you're really dealing with that too. And that messes kids up. I say it's really challenging for a kid. He's working out with his team in the off season, but then other schools are calling him about going there and him being fully invested when, hey, the strength coach yells at me, or I don't like this, where I am on the depth chart, and I can leave. That's not really a good setup, and there's a reason. I feel like in college sports, we usually always look at professional sports as like, okay, let's learn. They're usually ahead of us. When it comes to systems and rules of the play, on game day. So we usually copy them, and in this situation, it's like they have this model that works about free agency windows, about long-term contracts. Again, like I said, look at all those great players. They just leave at any time during training camp, and for whatever reason, our model is not at all near theirs. So it's very difficult. And you got dynamics in locker rooms too. Again, these players talk, they know what players get paid, and then you got dynamics around the country. Well, wait, I've been here, I've made these plays, and that guy just got here and he's going to make more money than me. So, again, not a good setup.
Coach, we'll go right in front of you, third row. Kirk.
Kirk Bowles from the Austin American-Statesman. You mentioned boosters and the most aggressive and richest boosters will get the players. Where does Ole Miss boosters rank, relatively speaking, in the SEC? And could you name 2 or 3 of your most impactful transfers you got?
Well, I'm not about to start putting rankings out on boosters from top to bottom in the conference. God, I want to so bad, though. The commissioner said, remember, we've grown a lot, and you don't have to respond to every question, to show everybody you have the answer. So I'm gonna do that on this situation. But like I said kind of before, you want to look at the best booster in the country, and eventually the schools that have the most money that decide to pay the players the most. Just look at recruiting rankings the next few years, and that'll give you your answer. Because again, it is what it is, guys, and you can't fault them. You had 18-year-old kids deciding where to go, the number one thing they decide on is money, their salary. I mean, I think you guys would have done that when you're 18. So, I mean, you can't fault them. Why you see some kids going like, why is that kid going way over there? Well, you're going there because you're making more money. So, you can't fault them for that. That's the setup that they're in. We have so many transfers coming in at so many different spots. It would be hard to single guys out. So it just is what it is nowadays. I mean, we look out there and there's times that, you know, we joke and we like pause the film and go like, okay, well there's, you know, we're like still learning names, but we know schools. We're like, well, there's a receiver from that school, there's a tight end from that, there's a receiver from that, the quarterbacks, USC, you know, the running backs, SMU, like, and you end up going like, wait, our whole skill roster was from some other school, like we're an NFL team, like we drafted them from somewhere.
And we have time for 2 quick ones. We'll start over here on the right, front row. Yep, there you go.
Evelyn Van Pelt with the Rebel Walk. You talked about it just a minute ago with the NIL and the locker room. How do you handle any kind of potential dissension? Because you're right, the players do know he makes this much and I make this much.
Yeah, the question is about handling the locker room with the NIL issues and the players getting paid different, you know. And I try to teach our guys like real life. And, you know, we say like pro mindset, like we have a pro mindset about how we run the program with guys and our expectations. So I get it because they come in complaining. You know, I've been here, you know, I transferred here, and now this guy, we hear this guy's going to make more money than me. And I said, you know what? I'm not saying it's fair, but get ready, that's life. That's going to happen. You're going to be in the NFL locker room, and you signed a contract, and this new guy, or you got drafted in the 4th round, and this new guy coming in, you're playing ahead of him, and he makes more money than you. And sorry to say, I mean, you want the real truth? Like I give them, it depends when you went in. You know, guys make more now than when they went in the portal a year or 2 ago. And then they used up their one-time transfer. So I'm like, hey, I'm just teaching you how life works. Like, it is what it is. You know, you used your window. You don't have the leverage now to go in, you know, until you graduate, because you can't go in a second time. So there's the truth of what really happens. But I teach them, hey, you basically signed a contract, even though you don't have a real contract. Like, you're here to play. You accepted whatever the terms are that you and the collective did. So go play and then figure it out after the season. You know, my dad used to say that to coaches in his first meeting of the year. Hey guys, quit worrying about your contracts or what you sign. Whatever you sign, it is what it is. Let's get together, let's play really well, let's coach really well, and then worry about that in the off season. So that's what I tell them now. The best way you make more money is to play really well.
Coach, we'll take one final question right in front of me, second row.
Yes. Coach Kiffin, Drew DeArmond, WZZN Radio, Huntsville, Alabama. I remember vividly seeing a picture of you sitting in the stands at Pike Road High School watching Quinshon Judkins. You had TJ Yeldon, Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, Damian Harris. What did you see in Quinshon that you thought was special, and how much better can he get?
Well, Quinshon is really special. I mean, think about what he did as a freshman, you know, to come in and have that workload. I think he led the SEC in carries and yards and touchdowns as a freshman. So, and like any freshman, you can get a lot better in year 2. You know, we're able to get Kevin Smith, coach back from Miami that's been with us before. And so I think that that's really beneficial for him, to have him as someone that's also was a great college player, that's gone through all this hype and that comes with it, you know, because that's his biggest challenge is his footwork and his pass protection. Even though he's really mature and a great kid, guys, these kids are young, and now they're getting all that attention around the country. They're the best player, all the rat poison from your coach, and now they got money. So now it's kind of like, whoa, you talk about ego coming in. I mean, so this is a lot of challenges on these kids. Again, it's great they get paid, but here's a whole new set of challenge, because a big motivation for a lot of players is to get to the NFL to get money. Well, now they already have money. So there's a lot of challenges in here in dealing with ego, which is really dangerous.
Coach, thank you for your time this morning.
All right, guys, thanks. Have a good day.